Have you ever woken up one morning to find that someone's hatred of you had spilled over into cruelty against something innocent? That's the kind of morning that changes you, that burns itself into your memory so deep you'll never forget the smell, the sounds, the sight of it all. I remember it like it was yesterday, the cold air of dawn still clinging to my skin, the grass glistening with dew, and the sound of one of my cows crying in pain, a sound that made my stomach drop. I rushed toward the noise, boots pounding against the dirt, heart hammering against my ribs like it wanted to escape, and then I saw her, my sweet Jersey cow, lying by the creek, her leg caught in a steel trap that had no business being there. Blood stained the grass beneath her, and she looked up at me with wide, panicked eyes. That moment shattered something in me, and at the same time, it built something new, a fire I didn't know I had, because whoever had done this wasn't just targeting an animal. They were targeting me, my family, my livelihood, and when you come after that, you better be ready for what comes next. Now, let me back up, because this wasn't some random accident. No, this was a storm that had been building for months, one I had tried to ignore, hoping it would blow over. But storms don't just disappear when people are hell-bent on causing destruction. It all started when I got new neighbors. At first, I thought it might be a good thing. The old Johnson place had been empty for years, and I figured maybe having folks next door would bring some life back to the area. But the moment they moved in, trouble followed. They weren't ranching people, city types with shiny SUVs and loud complaints. The first day, they wrinkled their noses at the smell of manure drifting on the breeze, as if they hadn't noticed they'd moved in next to a working ranch. The second day, they complained about the sound of my cows bawling at feeding time. The third day, they banged on my door at night to tell me my horses were too loud when they galloped in the paddock. I tried to be kind. I offered them fresh eggs, milk, even invited them to a barbecue. Every gesture was brushed off with sneers, or worse, slammed doors. Their faces always carried this look, like they were better than me, better than the life I lived, and they made sure I knew they thought I was nothing but a nuisance. At first, I ignored it. People can be difficult, I told myself. Maybe they just needed time to adjust. But their hostility didn't fade. It sharpened. They started filing petty complaints with the county. Noise complaints about my roosters, about my tractor, about the smell of hay during harvest. Every time I saw their number on my caller ID, I felt this pit in my stomach, because I knew it meant another headache, another fight I didn't want. But I kept biting my tongue, hoping it would end. Then came the morning with the trap. The moment I saw that steel jaw clamped around my cow's leg, my world tilted. I dropped to my knees, my hands shaking as I worked to free her. Her body trembled, her breath came in short bursts, and I whispered soothing words, even though inside I was screaming. The metal was slick with blood, and my own palms got cut as I pried it open, but I didn't stop. Finally, the trap released its cruel grip, and I wrapped her leg as best I could before calling the vet. As I pressed my hand against her neck, feeling her pulse race beneath my fingers, my anger crystallized into something solid. This wasn't just bad luck. This was deliberate, and there was no question in my mind about who had done it. I could see their smug faces in my head, hear their constant whining about my animals, and now this? Setting a trap on my land where they knew my cows grazed? They thought they could push me, intimidate me, make me give up my way of life. But they had picked the wrong person. That morning, as the vet loaded my cow into his trailer and shook his head about damn fools who think they can play games with traps, I swore to myself that I wasn't going to let this slide. At first, I did what any rational person would do. I called the sheriff. I showed him the trap, told him where I'd found it. He frowned, wrote notes, promised to look into it. But I could tell from his eyes he didn't think much would come of it without proof. Proof? That word stuck in my mind like a burr. If the law needed proof, I was going to get it. And when I did, I wasn't just going to hand it over. I was going to make sure those neighbors regretted every smug grin, every slammed door, Every second they thought they could run me off my land. That night, after tending to the rest of my herd, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of black coffee and a notebook. My hands still ached from prying that trap open, but I ignored the pain. Instead, I made a plan. Step 1. Surveillance. Step 2. Patience. Step 3. Strike when the time was right. The next morning, before sunrise, I drove into town and bought every piece of tech I could afford. Trail cameras, motion sensors, even some old hunting gear I hadn't used in years. I set them up quietly, one near the creek, another by the fence line, a few hidden in the trees. Each camera connected to an app on my phone. Now, every rustle, every shadow on my land would be mine to see. The waiting was the hardest part. Every night I checked my phone like a hawk, heart racing with every ping. Days passed with nothing but deer, raccoons, and the occasional coyote. But then, about a week later, I saw it. A notification in the middle of the night. I clicked, and my blood ran hot. There they were, my neighbors, flashlights in hand, laughing as they carried more traps onto my land. I watched as they set them near the creek, right where my animals drank. Their voices carried, and one of them said, "Clear as day. That'll teach him to keep his damn cows away from our property." I don't think I've ever felt such a mix of rage and satisfaction in my life. Rage that they had done it again. Satisfaction that I finally had them, dead to rights. I downloaded every clip, every photo, and the next morning I drove straight to the sheriff's office. This time, when I laid my phone on his desk and pressed play, his expression changed. No more doubt, no more polite nods. His eyes hardened as he listened to their voices, watched them trespass, watched them set their cruel traps. He picked up the phone immediately and started making calls. The days that followed felt like justice moving in slow motion. Deputies showed up at my neighbor's door, hauling boxes out, confiscating traps. I watched from my porch, arms crossed as their faces shifted from arrogance to panic. But the best part was still to come. Court day. I sat in the back, hat in my hands, listening as the judge read out the charges: trespassing, illegal trapping, endangerment of livestock. My neighbors tried to deny it at first, their lawyers spinning tales about protecting their property and misunderstandings. But then the sheriff rolled the footage, clip after clip of them sneaking, setting traps, laughing about it. The room went silent except for their voices on the recording, dripping with malice. And when the lights came back on, you could see it, the humiliation washing over them as the whole county saw exactly who they were. The judge didn't hold back. Thousands in fines, restitution for my cows' medical bills, a restraining order that kept them far away from my land. And the cherry on top? Their reputation. In a ranching community, trust is everything, and theirs was gone. People crossed the street to avoid them. Invitations dried up. Business connections severed. They had thought they could make my life miserable, but in the end, they were the ones isolated, ruined, left with nothing but shame. I'll never forget the look on their faces when they drove past my ranch after that trial. Eyes down, hands gripping the wheel like they wanted to disappear. Meanwhile, my cow healed, my herd thrived, and my land remained mine. Every morning after, when I walked out to the pasture and heard my animals lowing, I felt a sense of peace and pride, because I hadn't let them win. I hadn't let cruelty go unanswered. And here's the thing. Sometimes people think they can trample over you, that they can take what they want and leave you broken. But what they forget is that when you push someone too far, when you come after what they love, you awaken a side of them you never should have tested. They thought they were setting traps for me, but in the end, they walked straight into mine. So, if you've ever been underestimated, disrespected, or pushed to your breaking point, remember this. Justice has a way of finding its way home. Sometimes all you need is patience, proof, and the will to fight back. Because when the tables turn, the satisfaction is sweeter than anything you can imagine. And as for me, every time I see those empty fields next door, every time I remember the sound of my cow crying and then remember how it all ended, I know one thing for certain. They'll never forget the day they tried to plant traps on my ranch, and neither will I.